But Mike, I want to start with you. I know Robin introduced you a little bit, but tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, where you came from, and how you got started.
Yeah, so I've been running the MSP as an MSP since 2009, several years before that, kind of as a sole proprietor, doing whatever. Before that, even I went back and did mechanical engineering in college, decided I didn't really want to do heating and air conditioning for a living, and designing that just sounded boring. So I worked with a company that did big wireless networks for open pit mines, and spent about 4 years traveling all over the US doing really cool stuff, but then decided I didn't want to do all that travel, and could I bring some of that Fortune 500 experience I had back to small businesses? And so that was kind of 2009 when I started the business. Was with that eye, how do we do that? How do we bring that back? So I've grown it from, the spare bedroom, and it was just me bootstrapped. I mean, our first year, we didn't have Christmas with the kids, except for my in-laws gave us some money to buy Christmas with the kids. I mean, they were young, and we basically decided they're never going to remember it anyways. They're two, and we need the money to start the business, right? So kind of came from that to have grown it to, we're 21 employees, trending towards 4.5 million this year, depending on some projects and other things fall. And really just been growing, quickly over the last several years. We had one flat spot, and when that flat spot happened for a couple of years, that's when we got involved in TMT, and it's taken back off. We kind of grew by sheer force of will, and then leveled out, and then started really doing the sales and marketing, changing process, looking at things, pushing on that, and have been growing ever since.
And obviously it hasn't been easy because you lost all your hair doing it.
I did, yeah. I used to have hair one day way back.
Oh my God.
I had beautiful, luscious locks that are now gone.
That's where I got all the gray. This is all the stress is giving all the.
But I've saved thousands of dollars in haircuts over the year.
Oh my God.
That's true. That's true. Well, Brian, thanks for being on with us as well. Sorry about, I was talking to you earlier today about your house. So sorry about that. Hope that gets taken care of for you. But Brian, share your and Mary's story of how, your story has been powerful. So share that with us.
So we started our company in 2004 with 0 clients in a very extremely rural community of in a county of 52,000 people. And by the time 2017 got there, we were at $330,000 in total revenue and about $75,000 in debt. And so, and I think we had like $1,000 of MRR. Everything was break fix. So if you're doing break fix, I understand your pain where you're at. So in 18, we found Robin, and I actually had to go to a millionaire and ask him for $25,000 to pay for this. And he's like, what are you going to use it for? And I said, if you believe in me and what we're going to do, this is where we're going to go, and this is how I'll use the money. He goes, all right. So people will invest in you if they like you, they believe in you, they trust you. And I've always done his personal work. So he gave me the money to actually do this. So now I'm $100,000 in debt instead of 75. That was awesome. But we took that money and we put it into this. And immediately, it's so funny though, like we're on the phone with Aaron, and Aaron's like, and after 15 minutes, I'm like, Aaron, I'm sold. He's like, all right, let's sign up. I was like, Aaron, I don't have the money. We got to convince Mary. He's like, well, why isn't she on the call? I said, dude, if you don't get me, you'll never get my wife. Just kiss that goodbye. And he's like, okay. And so we sat down. I introduced it because my wife is one of those people you can't push into anything or she'll fight back. So I introduced Mary to Aaron, and she began to watch the videos. And then we're like, all right, we're going to do it. We got the money paid for it. And before we even got the boot camp, I landed a boot camp, but our rapid implementation, really, we should have gone through an MSP academy like this, but it wasn't invented at the time. So we landed our first true contract in May, and our first event was in July. And so we were not an MSP. We didn't have the tools or anything like that. So I kind of different than Robin shared is I came back, started buying tools, and I launched a year and a half worth of QBRs. Every quarter I sat down and said, I need you to buy this. I need you to buy this. I need you to buy this. And we got our customers up to $33,000 of MRR in 6 months. And then we came back to them a year later and introduced contracts because we didn't know how to do it. And when we became part of Producers Club, we were taught how to do that, and we took those contracts. And now we're at $140,000 of MRR. So in 17 and 30,000, 2021, we hit 1.8, last year 2.5. And this year we're going to hit 3.5 to 4 million, somewhere in there. And we moved from that rural community in Virginia, Roanoke, Virginia, which you have an office there. And we've moved to Dallas, Texas, and that's where our office is at. We're in Frisco. And so we're starting to pick up, much like Will, we're starting to get opportunities now in other cities where MSP owners like us, trust us, and know us, and they want to sell their businesses to us. So it allows us to expand our footprint that way. But it took 6 years to get there, right? It just didn't happen overnight. So that's it. And we paid off all that debt. Thank God.
That's awesome. Yeah, awesome, Brian. And as you guys see a theme here, and I want to clear up some verbiage to make sure, because it's like talking to a tech person, all kinds of acronyms, and we're using that. So MRR, monthly recurring revenue. That's key to managed services. If you guys are not familiar with that term, we talked about boot camp. Boot camp just happened for us 2 weeks ago. It's TMT's largest event that they have. And it is awesome. You come out of that fired up, about 1,300 people there, or counting vendors and everybody, about 2,000 people there. Awesome event. We do that once a year. So as what Robin was sharing with you about MSP launch, that is part of your membership, as well as getting tickets to boot camp. And then Rapid, we talked about Rapid. Brian talked about Rapid here. Rapid is a program above what's MSP launch, and it's a program we go through to get you kick-started in to or higher level memberships and everything. So my story, like a lot, I started in 2008. I was a vice president of, I was going to say vice president of client coaches. That's what I'm doing now. Vice president of technology at a mortgage company. We had about 900 employees in 2007. Actually, Friday the 13th, April Friday the 13th, we shut our doors at 5 o'clock because of the burst of the mortgage industry. And so I said myself then, I said, I am tired of working for someone to take the risk. I'm going to take the risk on myself if I'm going to do it. And so I went out and started my company. I started doing in 2007. I didn't even incorporate in 2007. Don't tell the IRS. And so I was just doing break fix stuff, what we consider break fix, or any projects I could do, or any consulting things I could do. And then 2008, I incorporated, and then joined TMT as a member in 2016, and here we are today. So this is sort of a little bit about my background. I have offices. Yes, I'm in Atlanta. Someone was asking me, and I was doing a private chat with them. We have offices in Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., New Bern, North Carolina, Mobile, Alabama, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Nashville, so we have it all over the place. So when people, I've had people come to me and say, Will, I cannot charge these prices in South Carolina. I cannot, marketing doesn't work in South Carolina. I'm like, well, I guess it works in North Carolina, Georgia, and Nashville. I mean, Tennessee, where it's surrounding South Carolina, but I guess there's borders in South Carolina. No, guys, it doesn't matter where you're at. It definitely does work if you put your mind to it.
And real quick too, there's a member I know that's in TMT, and he's gotten to, it's a town of 20,000 people. He does 1.2 million with a 20% EBITDA at the end of the year. So he's making 20% on that in a town of 20,000 people. Right. So it's like, you want to talk about small and big and making money, like it's all head trash for the most part. Like there is a lot of business. There's a lot of opportunity. People say I have too many competitors. I probably have in Lubbock, which again, 300,000 people on a good day because everybody came to lunch. But, and is in town from all the little ones. I've probably got 4 competitors that are at least $5 million a year. In this small town, and we still are going to do 4.5 this year. Right? Like, I mean, and there's a whole bunch of other small competitors too. So, I mean, yeah, there's competition, but it's all head trash, right? There's a ton of business out there to go get.
Yeah. So guys, some of the questions when Robin asked, what's your biggest concern, your biggest hurdle? One of them was talking about upsell to existing clients. And you've heard Robin talk about QBRs. How important is QBRs is quarterly business reviews or technology business reviews, whatever you want to call it. It is a regular meeting that you sit down and not talk about the fire of a ticket, and the tickets they put in about business strategy. Mike, I'll start with you at first. How important is QBRs in your business?
So QBRs are huge, right? I think a lot of people undersell them. We're trying to call them TBRs more just because I don't want to promise quarterly, because sometimes we have some really small clients we might not actually meet quarterly. So we don't want an implied quarterly meeting, but we try to meet with everybody a couple times a year, and larger clients. Like I've got one client, we have a weekly meeting, right? With their in-house people. And so it's a big deal because one, technology is constantly changing. Your customers need to know that, understand it. Your customers are constantly changing. You need to know that and understand it, because there's a lot of times they have pain and other things, and you can solve that pain if you'll listen. And that's the other mistake. I think a lot of people, they tried to do QBRs, TBRs, and they say they're not worth anything or customers don't want to go. It's because every time you showed up, you gave a report they didn't care about. You talked about things they didn't care about, and you tried to sell them something at the end of it, rather than trying to really talk about their business. Like we'll ask customers, what are annoyances? Is there anything in your business you think should be automated? And we'll see if that's something that maybe we can or can't do. One customer, they had a PO approval process that was terrible. Like there were a bunch of emails and waiting on people. So we set up some SharePoint forms and a few other things because they were at Office 365 and automated a lot of the process, and they loved it. And it took about a week's worth of labor to do it, and they still use it. They've been using it for a couple of years and they love it. But you can't find those opportunities unless you're talking to them. So I think a lot of people miss out on those opportunities to do TBRs and QBRs and really figure out what are your customer needs, what's changing, continue to talk to them. How can you help them? Wire fraud's a big deal. Like we can talk about it. Lubbock County, there was a news story that they got defrauded by $550,000. Secret Service got the money back. There's nothing in that article that mentions it, but we talked with the Secret Service and that particular thing, not because they're our customer, but because one of our customers was connected to it. And they actually said that we had better reporting and logging than most MSPs they deal with, which is fantastic. But the point is that news article happened. Somebody got ripped off through a wire fraud scam that happened with email. Now I can go back and take that to customers during the next set of QBRs and TBRs and talk about why they need different pieces of email security maybe they haven't bought. It's a relevant story. I can help increase their security. It doesn't feel like I'm selling, I'm helping. Those are the kinds of things that you want to look at. And you can only really do that effectively, or you can do it more effectively with QBRs and TBRs. Otherwise, it's always like you're showing up and you're opening your coat and you're like, do you want to buy a watch? Like nobody wants to work with that guy, right? But if I show up and say, here's where somebody lost money, here's what would have solved that problem, would you like to do it? Almost everybody will go, yeah, let's solve that problem.
Yep. And a lot of everybody on here probably are techs, just like how we all started out. And scared to get in front of the client. I wouldn't say scared, but uncomfortable getting in front of the client to sell. I'm not a salesperson, I'm not a sell. So get in and educate. The sell will come if you actually educate. So just get in the door, sit down with them, have a conversation about what's going on in the world, what's going on in your business. You're going to find solutions and the conversation for that. So Brian, I want to hit, you are great with relationships. And so I want to hit on this with you is one of the posts that said, not able to close deals. And maybe not, it wasn't worded exactly the same way, but pretty much a customer going dark on them after giving them the quote. How do you handle that process of preventing, and I'm sure it happens, but how do you minimize the customer or the prospect going dark after the proposal's there and closing the deal?
So to minimize that, like I continue to try to communicate with them. So I try to build rapport with whoever it is that I'm talking to, even when I'm selling. So here's one thing about if a customer goes dark on you, don't be afraid of that. Don't get insecure over that. All right. And I'm going to lead with a story that this is just happening for me now. Is I had the president's cell phone number, and they decided just went dark on me, I just kept messaging, how you doing? How's your family? Nothing about their technology, nothing about trying to sell them. Hey, I saw you on LinkedIn. That's really cool. What's happening for you? Hey, how's your vacation? Because we were Facebook friends. And I kept doing that with them. And because it's important to build rapport with people about areas of connection or commonality that's important to them. And you find out what's important to them by one, how they act, and two, the things that they talk about. Because people want to talk. And so I find out when I meet with them about what their vision and what's important to them personally. And I build talking points around that and communication. So I've had somebody that went dark on me 18 months ago in terms of like, I won't do business with you, but I continued to communicate with them. They just messaged me and they said, hey, look, I want to have a meeting with you. Okay, great. I had no conversation about a meeting. It's just, how are you doing? I'm flying to town. I would love to see you. Like, I miss talking to you. That's all I said. And so I referenced back to our regular conversation. Then they emailed me with their new director of technology. I want you to have a meeting with both of us. They never showed up. And, but I talked to the director of technology. The director of technology said they went with another MSP 5 times our company size, but we gave the absolute best presentation. And the CEO loved our relational aspect. And it always came top of mind with them. Never talked contract, just relationship. People do business with you. This is a Jeff Farr thing. Thank you, Jeff, if you're online. People do business with you because either they know you, they like you, or they trust you. I've spent 18 months building trust just on communication. Now what's going to look like for me, that contract's going to translate between 15,000 and 25,000 of MRR, all because I just kept talking to them. And so if somebody goes dark on you, don't be afraid of that. Don't get insecure and don't think they hated you, because you have to understand too, is they may have 18 million things going on in the background. So I constantly try to communicate with them based on our rapport that we built. So I don't know. I hope that helps.
No, it does. And
I was going to say 2 things I see happen a lot is a lot of MSPs will then even go the other way, and instead of they'll stop communicating, but then they're dead to me. They wanted somebody else. So you almost turn that potential client into your enemy until they come crawling back to you, which is silly. Talk to them. And the other line I have used a lot in situations like this or other things where you're trying to follow up with people that works really well is tell people, and do some variation of it, throw in ChatGPT if you want, or use it direct. I don't care. But basically say, hey, I'm trying to walk the fine line between good customer service and follow-up and being a pain in the ass. So let me know if I'm being a pain in the butt, but I wanted to follow up on I wanted to talk about this. Can we circle back? Whatever, what is that? When would be a good time? So there's a lot of that you can do if somebody's gone totally dark and is just not following up, and you feel like you're maybe annoying them. Shoot over another email, right? It doesn't hurt to ask again and just tell them.
Yeah. The other thing in the email you could do is always lead with what you want first and then compliment at the end. That's one thing that Rick Jordan taught us. So I send an email out right up front. Hey, love to connect. Here's some dates. Do you have time? Hey, it's great talking to you. Hope things are going well for you. So they're not having to get through like a couple paragraphs of what you really wanted, what they're really trying to say to them. You hit them direct up front, and then you give them options of dates and times. I have found doing that method also is very effective, because then you're like, oh, because you're leading with a question, I need a response from you. Is this okay for me to follow up? Then what that does is the client will go, yeah, that'll work for me, or they'll give you another option.
Yep.
So I found that to be very effective, leading with the question and then the option, and then compliment at the end.
And we also take the approach to get the next meeting. I don't care if it's a phone call, Zoom, face-to-face,
right?
Scheduled before you get off that call. I'm just going to use call for example, but get that next meeting scheduled. If they say, if you show proposal and you try to soft close them at a time, and they're like, well, no, I've got to get to the board. I've got to do this. I've got to get with my partners or whatever that next Monday. Okay, well, great. If you're meeting Monday, do you mind if we follow up Tuesday at 10 o'clock? Would that work for you? Right. So get that next meeting, and that will help them and help prevent them from going dark. Now, will you always still have people go dark on you? Yes. That's unfortunately the world. Keep moving. Don't get stuck. Don't say I've got this $5,000 or $2,000 or $10,000 deal and get stuck on waiting for that to happen. Keep marketing, keep going. Prime example, never give up when the sell. I had a client that was a client for me for 7 years. They had a new COO come in. The IT director loves us, did not want to get rid of us. The COO wanted to go in a different direction because I think he had a buddy somewhere. They went to the different direction. Needless to say, the COO is no longer there. The new COO is there. And guess who they called yesterday? Guess who I had a call with this morning? That client. Guess how much it's going to be? About $28,000 a month. And they're going to pay more than when they left because their prices are more. And so that's a $28,000 deal because you know what I kept doing? Sending newsletters to the IT director, keep sending drip marketing to them, staying in front of them because there was going to be a decision. Was the company they went to was not large enough to handle a company that size, and I knew that was what was going to happen. And so don't ever give up, no matter if they leave you, leave in good terms with a customer. And I've got more customers in the past 24 months that have came back that left around the 2000 to 2021 area that have came back in the past 2 years. So, all right, guys. So let's and any questions, feel free to throw into the Q&A. We'll get to that if you guys have questions for us. So let's talk about market size. I know, Mike, you've hit on it a little bit. People get logged in. I think let's lump in market size and then a conversation about the MSP is too saturated in their market with other MSPs. Can you talk a little bit, Mike, and then I'll go to Brian as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all, the short answer is just all head trash, right? Like, yeah, there's a lot of MSPs. There's no barrier to entry. Anybody can grab a laptop and say, I'm an IT consultant or I'm an MSP and go do it. But how they deliver service, what they deliver, how they do it. I go and I watch, look at things. I actually took Reddit off my phone because I just get mad looking at it. And, but you go and you look at like a lot of these, and especially if it's in the smaller MSP, and I'm not trying to knock anybody in particular when I say this, but there's a lot of people and they go to other companies their size. So they go to other 1 or 2 or 3 man shops and they say, what do you do? And they recommend things that I think in the long run are generally inferior, not because all of them are tending to be inferior, but they're not manageable, they're not scalable, they haven't had to deal with the problems when they got to $1 million, none of those things. And so they start building these little businesses and listening to these little businesses, and then they wonder why they can't grow. And it's because they're taking advice from people who don't want to grow, or they're okay, or how many times have you gotten phone calls? I think you and I talked about the other day where somebody basically has grown a business to this. It's a total lifestyle business. They want to turn around and sell it. They call Will up and they say, hey, will you buy my business? And he goes, you don't have a business. Like, you're an employee to yourself, and that's it. Like, you don't have a business at this point. And that's some of the problem I see happen, is it becomes this mindset head trash thing where you say, I can't charge that, I can't do that. You underprice, and then you wonder why it's so difficult to grow because you can't invest. And then you turn around and listen to people that don't want to grow, but you never ask that question. Or they say they do, but they want to grow 10% a year in an industry that's growing 20% a year, which means really you're losing 10% every year, because you should be growing at 10% as well. And so, right. Again, guy in 20,000 population town with 1.2 million, there's, I don't know, 20, 30, $40 million worth of MSP services in Lubbock, Texas, between me and all my competitors, I would guess. You can expand, you can push out. There's other ways to do things. Like, the key to it, I think a lot of it is suspend your head trash, talk to people who have done it, who have been through it, go through something like MSP Launch that was designed specifically to say, here's what the big guys are doing. You want to get there, so let's step you through that. And then you got to go out and execute with some of that head trash. I mean, I've had people that, we price stuff way higher and they didn't understand it. I mean, I keep using Will's examples just because they're always so good, but you guys, I remember, and it was so extreme, was you were talking to somebody who came to Rapid or Accelerators or something, and he was charging some nonprofit something like a couple grand a month. And after talking with Will and his team, they ended up charging him like 20 something thousand dollars a month. Right. And he helped that guy land that deal or whatever. The point being, he was offering $2,000 worth of service. He was charging adequate for what he was offering and maybe a little bit under, but he wasn't doing any of the other stuff. And so when you come back and say, here's what compliance and here's this, and this, that's a whole different thing. And I think that's the other thing they get hung up on. And I don't want to run off into pricing or whatever right now, but somebody goes and says, I'm charging $25 a seat and all I'm selling is antivirus. That's a great price for only antivirus. But the problem is you need a more complete package. You need to sell more. You need to do more. So it isn't often people take raised prices as just go charge more and do what you were always doing. And usually it's go charge more, but do a lot more and do it at the right margin to get those prices and to run your business well. And so that's the other part, I think, of the head trash that gets pulled into that. And then instead of using that as the excuse, they say, I can't price that high. My market's too small. My too much competition. That's what it all comes out as. But really, it's you're not offering the right level of support and showing the right value to the customer to be able to charge the things that you need to charge.
Yep. And guys, we got a question here. I'm an MSP based out of Northern Virginia. How do you deal with clients outside the area when on-site visits are necessary? Bottom line, guys, is this community is huge. I know if I have something in Dallas or if I have something in Lubbock by chance, I don't know why I would have anything in Lubbock, but I'm just kidding, Mike. I know I can call. I'm Charles Swihart in Houston, right? I've got people that I've got on speed dial that are in this community that I trust that can go take care of my clients for me. But Brian, you raise your hand on that.
Yeah, so I have a complete belief system when it comes to MSPs, when it comes to business without borders, because we were locked into a county of like 50,000 people. But the businesses weren't there. The people were, but the business wasn't there because of how rural it was. However, what we began to do was search around, and we have customers all over the US. And if I need somebody to go on site for me, I'll call them and we'll agree upon what our rate is going to be, but it's people that I know, trust, and I know that will take care of our folks. You can even set up a contract with another MSP if you so choose to do so, depending how large the customer is, or if you have several customers, say, hey, look, our monthly recurring rate is $150,000 per endpoint. Just give an example. What we'll do is we will give you guys $30 per endpoint if you'll just, or $20, whatever that number is, it's agreeable for both parties, that we'll give you that to you monthly, that I need you to go on site and service our people for us if we need you. But if we call you, you need to dispatch right away. So that is a way that you can do that if you wanted to go that model with somebody. Or you could just say, I'll call you, I'll get somebody over there, no problem. We do it, we've done it either way. So that's just an option to do that.
Definitely. So guys, I want to combine the next question here into compliance, security, and sort of packaging, right? A lot of MSPs, and I was that way, firewall, antivirus, RMM, that was it, right? And maybe a backup here and there, but how the packages have involved or should involve to include compliance and cybersecurity these days. How are you bundling that together, and how, and again, because we're about 4 minutes left here for our session, is how do you take compliance, cybersecurity, and put it in with the IT services that we could traditionally look at IT? So Mike, I'll start with you.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's what I said. Like, a lot of people don't bundle them in. They don't look at it. And so there's two ways to do it. And I know, anyways, there's probably 80 million ways to do it, right? And you either, I think, go at it and say, here's my base offering, which is a base set of services that you want to offer somebody with some base security, and then you have an advanced security package on top of it. Or you can offer a couple of different packages. We have a cybersecurity package with no labor or anything else. It's less expensive. We have that geared into smaller cloud-based businesses that don't have a lot of general IT needs. And we're very upfront when we talk to people about it. And then we have one that's kind of our everything plan, but even that has an add-on. We call it our Security Plus package that has stuff that people need when they need to have certain compliance things or whatever it is. So you can build these out and bundle them. And part of this is how your competitors might be selling as well. If they're wrapping everything into one as well, then sometimes that looks different. Well, the way we deal with our cheap competitors is we break it apart and we say, here's what our base service will cost that's comparable to theirs, but here's all the crap you're missing, right? And we don't actually have that package. We just talk about it. And like, I can do closer to what they're doing, but you're going to miss all these things. And that's why you need to go do it. At the end of the day, you know, we always talk about this in terms of packaging, pricing kind of stuff. Like, you need to put in what your costs are and then add margin to that. It should be 60-70% margin. And that's how you package and price based on what those packages are. But like, I know, Will, you guys have multiple different options. Brian, you guys probably have different options. So again, there's a lot of them, but at the end of the day, if you confuse your customer, it's harder to sell. It should be easy and clear to them. You should know what you need to go in and sell them to. You should have a base set of services that will meet their needs and a minimum cybersecurity needs, because otherwise, what are you going to do, right? And that's how you go compete with some of these other guys that are out there. But I don't know, Brian, how are you guys doing packaging and pricing?
Yeah, so we bake compliance into the endpoint itself. So we'll take like compliancy group for medical, and we'll take what the price is going to be for that. We'll divide it out amongst the number of machines that's there, and we'll add that in plus like 25-50% on whatever our cost is. So we make money on it, and we put that into the endpoint. We say you're getting compliance as a service with your machines, and this is our value add with that. This is what you're going to get for compliance services. And that enabled us to land a $30,000 MRR client despite simply doing that, because we offered something that they weren't getting and nobody had priced as an option to them. So we bake it into the endpoint with the costs and the profit and our margin on top of that.
Yeah, because when it comes down to it, like Mike said, you got to know your hard cost. That's your RMM, your antivirus, your SIEM, SOC, all the tools that's on that machine. And you need to know your soft cost. And the soft cost is the most complex one to come up with, right? And we definitely teach you how to do that. But and again, like Mike said, 50% margin is low. 60 to 70 is good. 70 to above is best in class MSPs out there. So be aware, and so don't worry about what does Will charge per computer or per endpoint or per user. What does Mike charge? What Brian charge? It's what you have to charge to make sure you have the gross margins to be profitable and having that 10 to 20% net profit at the end of the year.
Yeah, and that's what I always say, because if you don't, like you go to Will, right? You guys are managing more endpoints. So you go say you're competing against Integris, who's $150 million or whatever. They can be cheaper than you and still have higher margin than you because they've got vendors that are giving them better deals, right? So that's when you just say a dollar amount, it's always hard. What are you selling? What are your costs? How are you marking it up? Making sure you're profitable and going and finding those deals and making sure you're selling a package that's good enough. And then what I always say is, Robin's right earlier, which talks that 150 to 175. That's where you should. And if you're at $100 a seat when you put everything in, you probably don't have enough stuff, right? You're not adding enough value. You're not delivering a good enough service to compete with the other people that are out doing it. And so those are the things that you want to go look at and make sure you've got the right margins, the right product, the right things that you're selling. And that's how you're going out and competing with your competition and everybody else. And that then gives you the money to invest in sales and marketing, to go be in launch or accelerators or whatever as it continues to move up, to do the things you need to do to grow your business. Because I would bet that most of you guys, if we said that you should be a sales organization and spend between 30 and 40%. I think Hershevek says, 40% of all of his staff are sales. And if we said that's where you should be, everyone would be like, I can't friggin' do that. And it's because you're not charging enough to do that, to create the oil well in the engine that will go do it. And that's the big part of a lot of this, is how do you get all those pieces in place and the right operations?
Right.
That's what launch helps show you and push you into the next things for.
Definitely. Well, Mike and Brian, thank you guys so much for being on. I appreciate it. I hope you, audience, I hope you guys enjoyed it. And we are going to turn it over to the brains herself, Miss Robin Robbins.